are you going to sing She's One of Our Own, She's One of Our Own?
But I automatically go to Harry Kane, he's one of our own.
Exactly. So she'll be up for that, right?
How do United do this week?
So what time is she coming in? So tell us a bit about Sophie, because I don't know anything about what I do, but not much.
Sophie is Group Strategy Director at Talon Outdoor, outdoor specialist, and not joking, one of the smartest people in the room whenever she's in the room. She's super smart. She's worked at some top media agencies around the country.
That won't be hard today.
She's definitely going to be the smartest person in this room. But she's one of those people that she brings a presence into the room of knowledge, expertise, and you just sit in awe of some of the stuff that's in her brain. And some of that's from experience, but she's just a natural, and she's a good natural fit for out of home. So when we first started working with these guys before acquisition, there was a few projects, and you get to interface with Sophie, and you're like, it's great, it's not a problem. Sophie's on the project, and everything falls into place when Sophie's on the project. She's a natural kind of leader, but collaborator as well. So, it's good.
I like that. I like the some of the work is really interesting. The Google stuff looks amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, we could have featured tons of the stuff, and a large amount. This is going to be a very different podcast for us because it's about the unseen stuff on Behind the Billboard, which is, I think, what's really what we're about on the podcast is what happens behind the billboard, what happens to get the billboard there, and some of the audience insight stuff that Sophie does, and the data-driven audience insight to inform the media agency of where to put this billboard or why they should be targeting a certain audience.
It should be called Inside the Billboard.
Inside the Billboard.
Inside with a ninja.
It's very ninja-like what they do.
No, it's going to be good, and I apologise to everyone if I appear a bit thick on this call or just quiet because it's probably less my specialist department.
You've been working on your voice as well, haven't you?
Yeah. Shall I go and get her?
She's right outside the door looking at you.
Bye.
Hey. It's actually me today. Actually me. Hugh normally does the intros, that's why.
Yeah, can I just...
Your turn.
Can I warn listeners, I won't be talking so much today because it's like...
hungover.
And it's Talon Central, basically. Talent
We're outnumbering
Central.
you.
Yeah.
Talent Central.
Take it away, Dan. I'm just going to go and get a quick bite to eat.
So I wrote a little thing that says, look out, Hugh, we found the strategy department at last.
We do exist.
They do exist.
We're squirreled away in the back, but we're there.
And we've introduced who we're talking to.
We are today... Oh, shit.
That's awkward.
Today we're talking to Sophie Pemberton, who is Group Strategy Director at Talon Outdoor. And she's going to tell us all about being a Group Strategy Director and about Talon Outdoor in a minute. But first of all, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
We managed to squeeze you out of meetings from talking about quant versus qual and insights and ADA and lots of audience-driven insight.
I've got a data and engineering development sprint showcase after this session. So yeah.
And the econometrics of effective out-of-home advertising blended with social...
Oh yeah, all of those words. All of those words. It doesn't matter which order you put them in either. You can just say them.
In all seriousness, when I introduced you to Hugh on email, I did say that you were possibly the most intelligent and
outspoken,
knowledgeable, outspoken. I did say outspoken.
You did say outspoken, yeah.
Person that I've ever worked with in my career, and that's still true today. And you may have thought that was sarcastic, especially the intelligent bit, but I was serious. And it is a great pleasure to both work with you and to have you on the show. So welcome.
Oh, mate, that sounds really genuine.
Oh, Hugh, she's still here.
She's pregnant. We have to make her feel good.
That's true.
I think actually you're the first person we've had on with the bump. So we've got that's
media
good.
first.
Media first. I'll take that.
Yes, finally.
Maybe we can make a case study of it and enter it to Cannes. That would be strange.
So Sophie and Bob, welcome on to Behind the Billboard. Oh, we have had a bump on before. Your food baby.
My food baby?
Yeah, when all that lockdown weight that you were carrying.
Oh, thank you, Dan.
So I'm glad that we've got you into the office, because my first question was, where are we finding you today? And that would have been...
Right here,
which is right next to us, which is great.
I have to ask it. So everyone should know that Dan's given me a list of things to do.
It's normally the other way around.
I know. So it's actually quite frightening being on the other side of this. So it says, Hugh, now ask this question, you idiot. But no, I suppose this is good for me and for everyone a bit. Like, could you just tell us a bit about Talon and what Talon Outdoor does? That might be quite helpful for everyone.
Quite valuable. Well, so I started Talon 5 years ago. They're a company that are only 7.5 years old, so still relatively new in the media industry, I guess. They are wonderfully brilliant and mad to work with and for, and we specialise in all things that are out of home. So that could be stencils on the floor, as we did for a Google Cardboard campaign, or it could be some really jazzy creative stuff, or it could be, you know, your bread and butter billboards as you see them on the side of the road. So Talon do all of that. We do all of the data that sits underneath it, audience location intelligence, which is obviously my bag, all the way from A to Z, really.
You do programmatic, don't you?
Oh Lord! we started it.
Hugh knows the word programmatic, but he
start throwing it in at random parts.
I just thought I'd put it in there early.
We do programmatic.
And what does a group strategy director do at Talon?
That's a great question.
You can just make it up if you want. You don't have to.
I mean, I do every day, if I'm honest with you. I have a bit of a interesting role that has developed, I guess, over time, rather than being something that is available off the shelf. And it means that I get involved with long-term planning strategies. So if we have a client that come to us that have a really difficult thing to try and achieve, then we'll work through how we do that with maybe other channels, but we also work in data, we work in technology, I work in insight and effectiveness, work in programmatic. Right. It's basically anything that we believe is going to be really valuable to the future of Talon. Me and my team help map that out and get there. Right. So it's quite proactive. It's quite future facing, really, as opposed to reactive to what clients want and need, which is quite nice.
So you are sitting in a bit of an innovation space.
Exactly. Yeah. Innovative, not necessarily creatively in the basic guise of what that looks like. That's obviously Dan and Jay and the rest of the team, but innovative in terms of cutting edge technology is really where we sit.
Dan always has this wonderful expression which I've now forgotten about tech and creativity. You used to say it and I used to go, that's really
tech for creativity's sake.
That's the one. Because
it should be hidden, it should be in the background, it should be something that it's a tool that helps us get to the promised land.
Because there's always that all the gear but no idea, which is the thing I always used to stay with me, where someone would go, amazing out of home thing, and you'd go, right, great, and you look at it and you go, what? I'm not going to Instagram that, I'm not going to share that with my mates. And it would be like, and then you'd read about 9 paragraphs in, there'll be some piece of innovation, you go, oh, okay, but it still takes a piece of creative thinking idea to then make you go, oh, that's how you use programmatic.
I think that's the thing with the output from your team and from on the Talon side is largely unseen. It goes invisible because of it's media strategy. So the people on the ground see the creative. They don't necessarily see why they've been targeted with that ad or why it's in that location or why it's relevant to them. So they just it is a hidden.
We like to think of ourselves as ninjas, obviously.
Ninjas.
Yeah. We don't want to take the glory. We don't want to be the jazz hand of the front of the company. You know, we do all of the cool back end stuff, and tech should be a facilitator of all of that cool stuff that you look at and you see and you love. You shouldn't have to know about the Gantt chart that got you there, because I find it interesting, but obviously a lot of people find it boring. So, you know, we're the back end guys.
So you're the back end, and are you the
down the front end? Oh God!
It's like a pantomime horse. Is it that season already?
Very appropriate for this time of year.
Exactly. I think you had him impressed at Ninja. That was the thing. He's like, oh, right, okay.
But I also think like invisible ninja is even better.
At 7 months pregnant, I'm anything but invisible. I can tell you that much.
You and I have worked together for 5 and a bit years now. I think. You've worked before working at Talon. You've worked at some of the top media agencies around the country. So we are going to get into some of the work that you've helped deliver for clients. But when we were talking about you doing this podcast, you mentioned in passing a blimp for TSB that went horrendously wrong, and I think we have to start there before we get into the good stuff. We have to start.
That was really where I fell in love with Out of Home, if I'm honest with you. That's where I thought, this is the career for me.
Something goes horrendously wrong is when you fall in love with Out of Home.
Oh God, it was just one chaos theory after another, and we were, briefed, as you are done with. We want to do something cool and innovative, and we ended up at a blimp. I don't even know how we got there. And it was just, we wanted to do something over London, but putting a blimp over London with airspace control, very difficult. So we ended up actually just tethering it to their offices outside of Bristol on the M3.
The glamour.
Don't ever say that we don't do glamorous stuff.
I love the way that the idea goes really big. It's like, we want to do a blimp. We want to fly over London. Yeah, well, you can't do that. Well, okay.
Skywriting. That's where it started. It started all these really cool ideas, and we want to do lasers into the sky and do drones, and all of them sort of synced up with each other, and it just ended up with a blimp by the M3. And it wasn't a massive blimp, and I want to say it was sort of September time, and there was a freak weather incident of horrendous wind, and I remember being on holiday at the time, and obviously the tether of the blimp rubbed against the corner of the building and it got loose. And I mean, I no word of a lie, the RAF were involved at one point. It was unbelievable. We couldn't find this blimp for love nor money, and because it was by the M3, we were so worried that it was basically going to cause a massive pile up, and this was going to be this is going to be a massive TSB blimp lying in the middle of the M3, and it was just going to be awful. So for about 24 hours we were trying to locate this blimp, and it had gotten really far away. It had gotten something like 40 miles away and ended up in this horse field. And the reason why I found it is because this woman took a picture of it and tweeted it. Why have TSB put a blimp in? Oh no, it was unbelievable. It was obviously could have ended up catastrophically wrong, but it ended up being quite funny.
There's part of me thinking, or was this just your strategy all along?
All the time.
So then it'll be in a field, and then we get a local woman to tweet it, and then we get more publicity.
There's the cynicism of the creative director in the room. They definitely forced that.
I mean, the strapline was local banking on demand. I'm not sure that's what they had in mind.
Pretty good.
Trying to draw money out of a blimp.
It's funny how some of those projects, I mean, I was tagged in something yesterday by our mutual friend Richard Simpkins on Twitter.
Hero.
He is a hero. And he said the immortal words that happened on this catastrophic project that I worked on. It went horrendously wrong. Luke was on it as well. He just said, he hashtagged the immortal words, "We'll always have Cardiff."
Cardiff.
In reference to a project that just...
We all know.
It's just a nightmare project. Well, it was the perfect project. And I put that in my presentation to the team. This is the perfect project. Until it wasn't. Until it all went horrendously wrong.
But I think that's
But it's now just known as the Cardiff one.
People know. People know about that project. I think that's where, genuinely, you work with people when things are going catastrophically wrong, and you realise that you actually want to work with those people when stuff goes wrong. Because you're like, actually, this was handled in a really brilliant way. And that is, soon after doing that TSB blimp, I did go into Out of Home. So there must have been some sort of subliminal situation that happened to make me think this is...
I would take these kind of projects every day of the week.
Yeah, bring it on.
The successful stories that go well are just so boring.
Yeah, really boring.
Although I imagine, so I'm going to ask you about the first... campaign we wanted to feature, which is the Google one, and it's actually called Project Wolf. So first of all, I got to ask, were there any wolves involved?
Not that I know of.
No. So it's just Project.
No animals were harmed in the making of this programmatic campaign type of situation. No, I think it was. I don't know where the project name came from.
I think John Conway told me that when we first started, it was 4 guys in a room talking about the potential for doing it, and it was someone saying, "This is like a wolf pack."
Oh God!
And it became like a...
I definitely wasn't at that meeting, by the way. I would have vetoed the shit out of that.
It was someone on client side, that's for sure.
So it was a... So I'm going to say the word programmatic again.
Yep.
Not a word I'm familiar with, but for me it would be something like, that poster's sort of reacting to the time of day or the weather or something. As a creative, I'd go... And I think for years, we used to try and do that sort of shizzle. And then suddenly when it came up and it happened, you are going, that is really... It's just so rewarding, as a punter, because you always look at ads and go, oh yeah, but it's already out of date, that thing. Why isn't it talking to me about Wimbledon because Murray's just won? So it should be something about Murray. And now it's raining, the roof's on. You know, and I love the way that. So is that what, in its essence, programmatic is? You can program. Sorry, it's like being at school.
Literally break it down.
But you can literally program a piece of outdoor, like a screen, to react to stuff.
That's definitely a part of it. I mean, I don't want to get into this because it's really boring, but programmatic means a lot of different things to lots of different people. And to me, it's quite simple in that you are able to target people that care about certain things with the right type of content. So that people, whether or not it's actually happening right then and there is one element of it, but also it's happening then and there to those people that actually care about it.
Right.
So you know, I love baking. So if I'm walking around and I see ads about baking, that is also programmatic, but it's not necessarily that there's lots of things happening at the moment about baking. Although Bake Off obviously just did happen. So yeah, programmatic is about putting the right content in front of the right people to make them more interested in it, I guess.
But I suppose that is what all work does anyway, but it does it in a more efficient, dynamic way because you can change. So how did it work on the Google job? Could you tell us examples?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it. You know, those screens light up with the right content. You're like, oh, that's happening right now. I think that one of the pieces of creative was about the Rugby World Cup and the winners of that particular game. And you think, oh, that's really interesting. That's just happened right now. Again, you don't see the 8 months worth of technical builds that happened in the back end of that, which again is probably, you know, all of the ninja-y stuff that we try and do. So the Project Wolf piece of or project that came about was because, you know, that's Google's game, that's Google's brand, and they want to be able to move ahead with things much quicker than they currently are doing, and they will you know, brief you to do that. They won't necessarily give you a creative strategy that is really specific. They'll just say, we want to do things that are 3 years ahead of where they currently are, and this in particular was, I mean,
that's 2017, so it's nicely done. That's 3 years.
At least 3 years ahead of where they currently were. So yeah, that was basically the brief. Like, let's do some interesting stuff.
And so, did you? Who wrote the ads?
RGA.
Yeah, that was. They have a sort of lots of different creative teams, depending on the brand that you're working with on Google. But RGA in this instance.
Oh, I see.
And I think the smart thing about this stuff is that, you know, I think if you think about what great outdoor does, there's always an out of home strategy. There's a media strategy to it. So there's a lot of, you know, manual work that goes into locating locations and targeting audiences, and there's a lot of manual work that goes into the creative as well. You know, there is 25 headlines in this campaign. It's not just a single 48 sheet poster. Is what you've got when you've got programmatic media, the ability to swap in your media slots as required by the data that defines it, and then you've also got creative that can slot in based on people's mindset or what's happening in the conditions, football results or something. When you marry those two things together, all the strategy that comes together, you've written all the different permutations for what audiences might be around and what they might be doing, and you've written all of the creative that says South Africa could win the World Cup.
So the one we're looking at the moment just says, what time is it in South Africa? And
that would have reacted to the fact that South Africa were playing in the Rugby World Cup that day.
Right. Gotcha.
They had thousands of different versions of this, depending on what the results were of that World Cup campaign. They also had different Google brands on it. And I think the thing that I found really interesting with this is, yes, it did take a long time, but for a massive company like Google, they tend to have quite a lot of faith in an idea and let you run with it. Right. And they did it for this, and they did it for another campaign, which we'll talk about shortly. But, you know, if they just sort of understand the broad concept of it, they didn't get too bogged down into, you know, what it actually ended up looking like from start to finish and all the technical aspects. And I think this is a really rewarding version
so this
of that.
This is like when did New Zealand start doing the hacker? That's another great one, right? It's all related to, you'll be watching it and thinking, oh yeah, what's going on there, you know?
And so what RGA did with this is they were briefed on the fact that these are the different permutations, and we had all the different scenarios and data points. So they would go away and look at what people were Google searching around other events, and they would writing lines based on actual.
Gotcha. So it's great. I mean, it's the sort of stuff I love. I love things which are just smart and creative, and just like you said, just relevant. They're of the very moment.
It's just a nice image. It's a nice headline, and there's a couple of brand bits on there. I mean, to me, you can get too bogged down in the complications of programmatic and putting everything on there and wanting to be really smart. But actually, at the end of the day, all you just need is some great-looking visuals.
Yeah, that's what I was saying about your kind of the stuff that you do specifically is hidden from the public eye. There are people walking past the site that we're looking at now with when did New Zealand start doing the haka, who have just walked out of Twickenham having seen New Zealand win the World Cup, and they go, "Oh, that's that's where I am, and that's what I'm doing," and they won't realise the work that's gone into it. So the kind of the hidden ninja-ness.
Yeah, show me the Confluence page that made that. No one cares.
Is there so now in 2020 or nearly 2021? Is there a more up-to-date version of this? Is there something now where has programmatic moved on to another level, or is it?
It's broadening in terms of more brands thinking about using it. I still haven't seen any brands using it in actually this way, in the way that it's reacting to things in real time and it's saying things that are really relevant to an event that's happening. There's more reactivity happening, but I still haven't seen anything that's been quite as sophisticated as this, purely because it did take a really long time and it was an awful lot of money spent on it as well. I just don't think that we have the infrastructure in out of home yet to be able to deploy campaigns like this at scale. We're definitely getting there, but we're still not quite.
And would you say this system for this kind of was this a sort of roadmap project? So kind of you look at this project, how it's delivered, and did that help define any products or platforms that Talon have delivered on the back of this? Is this kind of a blueprint?
Yeah, I think we looked at this and thought, there's something in it. This is where it's going to go. And it certainly, like I said, it is going in that direction. There's a lot more talk about programmatic. There's a lot more talk about the digital capabilities of billboards now, because the infrastructure of the UK out-of-home landscape is changing, and you'll see it as you walk around cities. You'll see that paper posters are changing into digital ones, and those digital screens do things in a completely different way than they do when they're paper, because they have cameras on them sometimes that can detect emotion, for example. And that kind of capability and technical functionality is meaning that there's more clients wanting to do cool stuff.
Yeah,
they're not quite sure what they want to do yet.
Yeah.
And to Dan's point, we try and say, don't get hung up on the technicalities of what these screens can do. Still focus on the creative.
Yeah, I mean,
point.
For me, the thing I remember working with Dan actually years ago. It's probably my first projects where you create the ability for a phone to talk to a screen. And we were sort of mates at the time, and he said, "Oh yeah, there's this sort of bespoke thing we're doing, and blah blah blah." And then before we knew it, we'd come up with an idea for domestic violence. And it's at those moments you think this is really exciting, because, like you said, it's where the tech and the creative come together and they work. And this one, I love this campaign as well. But when you see it, it seems seamless and go, "Oh yeah," But like you said, there's just so much hidden in the background.
I think that's part of the issue, though. I think one of my roles here is that we have to educate the creative community is that this stuff can happen in the background. It's not a threat. It's actually an enabler. And I think that the creative team who worked on this got to write loads of headlines. So the copywriters of the world and the art directors of the world are really happy, because it's not just one 48 sheet. It's potentially thousands. So
that's a really good point. I was going to actually say they probably. You get that thing. You need to write a headline for every eventuality. Even so there's an earthquake. They get those things, and you sit there and initially going, it's going to be a bit of a ball ache. I just want to write one nice headline. And you go, actually, it's really good fun. Because you just think of... In the old days, that would never happen. You go, right, you got 3 48 sheets. The paper's going up tomorrow. You can only have 3 lines,
Yeah.
Imagine being briefed with that line in January.
Yeah.
Plan for every eventuality of 2020. I don't know this is where we would have gone to.
God, what a lovely time. Beginning of 2020. Anyway.
So Google as an advertiser, they were kind of... I think they really started looking at out of home in a more grown-up way around the same time as Talon kind of got the account. So there's kind of a mutual respect there. But I'm sure Talon played a part in getting them using outdoor outdoor advertising in more innovative ways. And that the programmatic campaign is certainly a proof point. But the second one that you selected is probably another one of those, and it's certainly one that was, definitely your baby.
Yeah.
First baby.
Campaign baby.
Oh, thank God I'm not giving birth to a bus this time.
So if we can talk about Project Open Road, which is the Google bus, if you can tell us about how it was conceived and what you went through to get there, and we can...
Yeah, I guess it's another one of those examples where we just had a bit of a left brain idea, and they liked it, and they just said, okay, get on with it. There was no difficulty in having to sell this in. There wasn't even a brief, in fact. It was just, we kind of knew that Google's ambition was to digitize stuff that wasn't digital. That they are a digital powerhouse, so that's exactly what they want to do. So we took one of the most traditional modes of transport, London buses, and we decided to try and make them digital. So again, another massive project, months worth. I like that,
because that's quite a good sentence. Yeah, just make buses digital, right?
Yeah.
But it's very Google, isn't it? As well, they want to bring all of the digital marketing knowledge and experience to offline channels. So that's it's kind of what they've done all the way through on other things.
So tell us. So what happened?
So luckily it didn't end up in a horse field. They kept to their roots. But we took 20 buses across London, and they have, as you'll know if you've seen them, actually London or anywhere across the UK, they just have paper sides on them at the moment that have advertising, and we replace those replace what they're called like bus sides with digital screens, and those digital screens were also plugged into the navigation system, so it could understand where it was on its route. And Google at the time were launching their second version of their Pixel phone, so it would be able to understand whether the bus was in Angel, whether a telephone store in Angel was selling that phone, and it would say go to this store just over there. So again, it was one of those quite subtle technical mechanics that made a lot of sense to people that were seeing it in the right context.
That's brilliant.
It flew under the radar a little bit. People knew about it, saw it. It won a couple of awards, but it was one of those things that didn't really take off. And I'm really confused as to why it didn't, because it had such a wonderful capability to do all of that stuff that people were after, be reactive, but no one really took advantage of it at the time. Maybe it was a bit too early. It was like 2018, I think.
It's lovely because it's a sort of. It's a billboard that's driving around and reacting to everything it's seeing and doing, which, again, you write that down on a bit of paper, you're going, how the fuck are we going to do that? And then you go, well, talk to you guys, obviously. But I think you're right, because the way you've just described it, I'm sitting there going, God, that's a good idea. But I don't remember seeing it much at the shows or judging and going, why didn't that make it in? It's like you said, sometimes you just do stuff and it's either people who haven't quite got there. I mean, there was that stuff from Yell. Do you remember the ad shells, and it's going Harrods sort of behind and all that? And at the time, it was like, wow. And now you look at it and you're going, okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, there must have been some hoops to jump through to get, because there weren't screens on those buses before, right? There weren't.
There were not. No. The compliancy. The health and safety. The things that I know about buses now that I didn't know before.
Got buses, blimps.
I have a real speciality here at Talon. It's not just data.
But what was the issue with the screens?
A lot of it was about the way that they were connected to the bus, about the way that they affected the systems on the bus. It was just the light from them as well, because we were launching it in November and December. Like, how bright could we be? What kind of pixelation could we get? It was just a lot of
driver safety and
lot of driver and passenger safety. Would they fall off? Because it's on the passenger side where you get on. So if you're stopping and it comes off at a bus stop, you're in a lot of trouble.
So what you were being a bit slow. You were sort of gluing these on.
Gluing?
For what?
Well,
Yeah,
not like a Pritt stick out, but
or copy decks.
Yeah.
because they were meant to be quite a bit bigger. Actually, the size of them that they ended up being is smaller than the standard bus T side that is, or super side that is on there. So you have to make it smaller.
You get a bus, you go, forget everything about T size, we're going to change all that and we're going to glue on this massive screen. I mean, that is even that is quite a big thing. And then to go, okay, now what's going to appear on the screen and yada yada. I mean,
we had to build the screens as well. The screens hadn't actually been built yet.
God,
so we had to talk to screen specialists about pixelation sizes and how far away that you could see these things and the colours that you could get on them.
Because I can imagine quite a few clients or even agencies, dare I say, at a certain point in that, excuse the pun, along the road, you'd go, fuck it, it's not worth it, or we're not bothering, or you know that thing where, and there's a poor little creative or with a tech strategist going, no, that's our baby, you know. And I love the way you've gone for it and you've learnt it and how to do it. It did actually remind me, just thinking of, do you remember that Virgin poster? I think it was at Euston, it was a digi, and someone sat sort of in a building over the road, could type stuff, and it'd say, yes, you, man with red hat on, blah, blah, blah. And I love that. I mean, it's not quite the same, but it's around there, isn't
Similar,
it?
yeah. And I quite liked getting nerdy with all of the detail of it. Like, you know, we were going down to these dark and dingy warehouses to try and look at what the screens looked like. We ended up in somewhere up in Hampstead Heath, like watching the bus drive around a big car park at one point with the Google clients. It was the most unglamorous thing in the world, but we were like, look at it, isn't it look awesome? There were prototypes developed and all of that kind of stuff. So
that's good. I love getting your hands dirty, looking at it. You know, that's for me. That's the sort of game.
No, we talked about that PS5 thing by the sign builders the other day. You know, it's that kind of stuff where you know you've got a bit of some metal working going on. There's real production, out of home production that's going on to bring a format that doesn't exist to life, and then to sell it to a client, and then to do something that people haven't seen before to make it kind of.
I think they also
mapping out all those bus routes.
They look great. Oh, the bus routes, that was really fun. Bus depots. I just think they looked really good. They looked really simple. And actually, despite them not getting that much airtime in awards and across big press releases and things, it did really well for the campaign. And that's all we, my team, that's all we care about is like, did it actually work? Did it sell more phones? Yeah, it did, yeah. So, again, don't get too hung up on the technical side of things and all the back end. It's like, did it actually work and did it get people to buy more stuff?
If there were any other examples for the when we put it up.
Yeah, I think there's some more pictures of it out live, because I think it reacted to all along the bus route. It reacted to where it was, and there were rules about where the content was allowed to change and when it could change. So there were inside this in the back of the bus. There's literally a supercomputer that's always connected to the cloud, and it understands where that is, and it understands what content it could play, and all of that content as well was reactive to those real-time conditions. So if it started raining at Piccadilly Circus, it would play something different than when it was at Holborn.
I was just thinking, could it?
Sunny.
I don't know if this is illegal, but then could it feed into your phone while you're on that bus, or is that messing with privacy?
No, we were looking at NFC at the time, because you could put little tags, near field communication.
Of course.
Sorry.
He's really impressed now.
Listen, I was struggling at programmatic, so NFC,
whole other ball game.
Yeah.
And you can put little tags on the back of the seats to. It's almost like a QR code type thing that you scan, and then you could get onto a network and then sync that up to the screen. But the problem with that is the more power that you drained off of the screen and off the bus, the more likely the bus was to break down. Right. So we had to be really careful that Google didn't break buses, because that would have been a bad headline.
Okay.
But yeah, there's lots of different ways in which you could bring that to life. And we were looking at, as you're pulling up to a bus stop, does the screen change so that it syncs with the bus and the thing that's happening on there? Again, we ran out of time, I think. But
I think what I love about it as well is it's a brilliant idea, but you need someone like Google with the backing and the vision, and they're going, just do. I love what you said. They just came and say, just do something technical with this, blah, 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 which is like a dream for people like us.
Yeah.
Rather than going, say this, don't do that, blah, 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 you're going, wow, not sure if we can, so I think, but if it wasn't Google or someone like that, it might struggle because you go, like we're saying, the technical aspects of it and the budgetary stuff, and you kind of going, you need a kind of a big client to go for stuff like this, don't you?
And they're quite disruptive as a brand and advertiser. They quite like this stuff, don't they? They quite like the innovation innovation project.
I think that's where we got to with Google, and they weren't doing an awful lot with us. They weren't spending an awful lot of money in out of home. But then when we started to not concentrate on the briefs that we were being given that were quite straightforward, and we started to just come to them with wacky ideas, they loved that more than they did the stuff that they were just briefing us on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's where we found the opportunity and the potential for them, and that's when we ended up doing some really cool stuff.
Well, yeah, and I think as a creative, you work on a brief, but if you're on something like Google, which is really exciting, you're going, oh, and another idea, and that's when you start getting to a really good space, because you come in with stuff which is proactive, but then you put it under their nose going, oh yeah, let's have some of that,
Yeah, if you had a 10-slide presentation, there'll be one slide which was responding to the brief, 9 slides which are here's some really random stuff that just came into my head last night, and that's what they like, and that's what I think we need to do more of. Don't just respond to the stuff that you're getting, because a lot of people don't understand the potential. We just need to go back with all the other.
And I think we've certainly seen that working on the various brands with BBH and Anomaly and RGA and 72 and Sunny, when they see that out of home is on the plan, and because they've got their kind of their core idea, and work out how to craft something for digital out of home or something updatable, and they start hearing about the capabilities of it, it actually excites them, and I think that's quite good that they've got they're split across a number of creative agencies. It's actually quite good for them, because they're very good ones, and they also those teams are used to working on Google now, and they see this stuff happen. They go, oh great, I'll have some of that. That's
it starts to feed itself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Do we need to take the bus up the road to Virgin?
We do.
Virgin Unlimiting. Now, I'm going to go back to my notes here that the headmaster gave me.
Also, Hugh loves a timeline, so this one, I did do them in chronological order for him.
Lovely.
He does like seeing them in the order.
And also, I like pieces of paper.
He likes paper.
Yeah. Because I'd like to squiggle, and I've got to call Louisa back. I mustn't forget that. So Virgin Unlimited. Is this the largest special build ever undertaken? Is this like a Guinness Book of Records question, Dan?
Yeah, we'll claim that.
I think it was. Yeah. That's my research says it was.
What does that mean? What? So a massive build or massive amount of sites it was on, or both?
The number of sites, I think.
There wasn't a one size fits all. We'll put it around the country. There was something like 30 or 40 different builds of an out of home campaign across the whole of the UK. That it looked great. But my expertise was in the identifying of those sites using data. So again, we got involved in the back end, which probably took the most amount of time. And then Jay and the creative team made it look really good.
And we're going to have Jay.
Jay's coming in the new year to talk about Dracula with the BBC team.
But the unlimiting idea was it that then? It was unlimited, as in where you can go. How much it can be.
So what was the brief? Take us back to the...
it was like, basically, can you unlimit out of home? Are we not limit? We don't want to be limited to everything that we do. We want to completely break out of the mould of what your capabilities are.
Beyond the Billboard is back, Hugh.
That's where it started.
That's our next season.
I think I got a phone call from MG, the agency, to sort of say, we've got this massive campaign coming up. We want it to look amazing, but we want it to be completely underpinned by a data-first strategy. That's great. How big do you want it to be? It was absolutely huge. It was a massive spend of a campaign, and they wanted to get it done in about 6 weeks. And our timelines for data and intelligence and audience targeting is probably about that. But I mean, that would take the whole timeline basically before you even got to the build stage. So that was really the brief. It just sort of came across as a phone call. What can we do, and can you come back to us with the potential? So it was one of those times where I with Jay and the rest of the teams really pulled data, technology and creative together, and the two had to be fused, because otherwise it wouldn't work. So we did all of the back end stuff, and then they created the stuff.
And was that was around identifying where and why and.
Again, it was really, really boring. But we took something like 5 different pieces of data, which was, where are Virgin able to stream these services? Where are people that are going to be switching to Virgin? Where are people that are interested in Virgin products? Where are people that aren't interested in Virgin products?
All over the country.
All over the country. Yeah, we mapped them down to postcode level to understand exactly where Virgin should be putting these 40 massive, great big billboards and banners and creative builds, and then giving that to Jay and the team in order to say, go and figure out what you can do on them. So we didn't get involved in the creative side of things, but we identified the locations, and then Jay basically had a real struggle in his hands to figure out what you can do on them, because they were all different, and they all had to look different. They all had to break out in different ways. So
So Adam and Eve were the creative agency, because there's a...
Yes, we spent a lot of time with them throughout this campaign.
Yeah. I wish Virgin would be less limiting on my signal as I fell out of a pitch about 2 weeks ago. Literally just someone grabbed me by the balls and threw me out the window. It's like, no. But no, that's on the side. It's great. I mean, I love this one. Is that a car park behind it? And
I think that's in Birmingham.
So it's a poster that says unlimiting, and then the poster has actually gone all over the car park behind. So it's breaking out. So it's great, isn't it? I saw one of these before again. Can we flick back up? There was one. What's that one on?
There was one on the underground that was like the whole tunnel was wrapped.
But is that the side of a house, or is that?
Yeah, side of a building. That one, I think.
It's brilliant. I mean, I love that. Is that part of their identity, or is that an artist who created that sort of swooshy?
I think that was a lot of Adam and Eve creating that kind of look and texture.
Yeah.
And it's it's fairly indicative of the cables and the connectivity of Virgin and all of that kind of brand related stuff. But it just looks really eye-catching, and again, it's just a really clear piece of creative, brand colours and a tagline. Unfortunately, I can't remember the other telecoms company that came out with the Unlimited campaign about 2 days later.
Oh, really?
Really irritating.
Oh, my God.
But it didn't look as good.
No.
And how many sites was it? Do you know?
It was like 30 to 40, I think, in the end. And they were all completely different. They all had to be built from scratch. I mean, some of these things are, 10 metres high or 50 metres long as part of those underground tunnels. So they were absolutely massive. And again, they did really well, but there was a lot of toing and froing on this one. But we got it done, I think it was like 6 to 8 weeks in the end with Adam and Eve. It was tight, but fun.
Yeah, it's really impressive. I mean, it's visually stunning, and Adam and Eve have done a great job. We'll also talk to Jay about this one as well when he's in the new year with the BBC team on Dracula, because I know, having talked to Jay about this campaign, it was a real headache, but a good one. We're going to deliver the biggest special build campaign we've ever done, and that's a.
They never not wanted to do it. We came across so many problems and issues, but they never not wanted to do it. And all of the stuff that sits behind it, all of the information that sits behind it is so geeky. That's what I loved about it. It wasn't just you saw a location and it happened to be plonked there. There is a really specific reason why you're looking at that, and why it's there and why it looks like that. And that's exactly what we were.
The hidden ninja-ness coming out again.
Always.
Yeah. It's weird having an invisible person behind the billboard.
I think that the thing that all three of them have got in common, and I think the reason that we were desperate to get you on, is that they're hugely innovative projects. They look really good, but the strategy that underpins it and selling that to the client is often the hardest thing. And not just the client, but the creative agency. Can you tell us a bit about how those selling times happen in terms of what Talon offer to clients and agencies and creative agencies?
Yeah, I guess with these campaigns in particular, they weren't ones that came from a 4-page brief that had been written that was really specific about what they wanted, when they wanted it, and what it needed to look like. It was just an idea or a strap line or a brand proposition that they trusted us to bring to life. And I think when you get that, it's much more exciting to be able to work in those parameters than it is when you've got something that's like, I want a tube car panel, because they are really boring. And then you get to work with different people. You get to work with creative agencies, or you get to work with people who specialize in building screens, or you get to work with the creative team. And it becomes so much more interesting to work on a project like that together, collaborate on it, and then try and sell it in. Because once you've got everybody on board, it's a lot easier than, all of those different agencies having their own individual brief and trying to piece it together. Yeah. That becomes really tricky, and you end up with a fairly diluted idea and a fairly diluted execution. But with these, it had to be everybody's in the same room. You probably don't understand each other. You're probably all throwing really annoying acronyms and jargon about, but you end up with something that looks really good and actually works. So sell times are always really tough on these projects, but they end up being much more interesting because of the fact that you are forced together in a room for a very short amount of time to do something that needs to be done.
And do you think it's certain types of clients who are just that way wired, or is it about their agency teams that are kind of helping push them in the right direction?
I think agency teams are up against it with timings. I know working at agencies, like you are working on so many different projects and talking to so many different people at any one time that you do try and make life easy for yourself. Once you get a client that is more involved in that and actually wants to push it and drive it and execute it, and they are the driving force behind it, becomes a lot easier, because then you've not got this intermediary trying to, not necessarily, I mean, I don't mean this in a harsh way, but like dumb it down. It does sound harsh. I do mean it in a harsh way. You've not got that. You've got the client just going, no, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And you do get a certain breed of client that do behave like that. And it doesn't necessarily need to be the big sexy Googles of this world. You can get performance-based clients doing that. You can get, we've done some really smart stuff for clients like Smart Energy, for example, or Thames Water. And, they're not the big and sexy, beautiful brands of this world, but they do have a tenacity to want to do better work. So I just think being a bit braver and just having a really clear vision on what you want to achieve, and then letting my team and the people that can get bogged down in the detail, just let them get on with it. And you end up with stuff like this because you don't get too caught up in the weeds.
I think the other thing that we've kind of skirted around it on these three projects is that on all of them there's been great synergy between media, creative and specialist. So the media agency, the creative agency and the specialist all working together to fulfill on something that's going to deliver in the out-of-home space is key. So I think it's, there's three different creative agencies here and a couple of different media agencies, but it's good to see that the age-old war between media and creative the walls can come down to deliver great work.
We can play nicely.
Yeah, what? I'm in love on that.
Hugh's got his arms crossed already. So we ask all of our guests to come on as a kind of the closing section. The tips, and I think today we should probably focus on what would be your tips for the kind of aspiring out-of-home strategists and smart thinkers who are looking at the media industry and looking specifically at outdoor. What would you do? What would you say to them to help them get into this field, and what should they be doing in terms of their experience to get to group strategy director?
To get here, I think the one piece of advice I guess I'd give to anyone that's starting in a strategy role, whether or not it's a specific channel like out of home or more generalist in an agency, is don't worry about the fact that you're tagged to out of home or to digital, just because I don't actually do any out of home activations. I don't deal with billboards. Think about what it is that you enjoy. If it's like problem solving, if you like data, if you like spreadsheets, if you like coding, and think about how you can use that to help a business or some clients do better stuff. Yeah. Don't get bogged down in all of the day-to-day client briefs. I don't deal with day-to-day client briefs. I don't talk to clients on a daily basis. I kind of do things that I think are interesting and the business think are interesting, and they've got to have faith in you to do that. So yeah, it's a tricky role. It's not for everybody. You've got to be really flexible. You've got to be someone who doesn't necessarily want to have a job spec and stick to it, because that won't happen ever. It definitely won't happen in Talon. You just got to kind of roll with it and see what's exciting and see what you can do with it.
Great,
that's good.
We also ask, do you have a favourite outdoor campaign, or recently, or of all time? Is there one you always go, yeah, that's one? I mean, the ones we've talked about today are pretty good, but do you have
of all time?
Of all time. Well, I remember being at university and I'd studied marketing and advertising way back when. And the one that I always remember, and it's interesting that you had Ben Kay on, because he did some of the work for The Economist, I believe, in the past. But it's the one where the bus roof is taken over.
Yeah. Hello to our readers in high
offices. Yeah, I just remember seeing that and thinking that is so smart. Yeah. It's not really difficult. It's kind of hidden. It's a bit subliminal, but it's just the way that it was executed. And again, it might not have been massive. I love buses, obviously. This is a theme occurring here.
It's the bus lady.
It's the buses. I just think, The Economist stuff is just brilliantly simple.
And there it is, Economist again.
Yeah, I know. Do you think we have talked about that quite a bit, but do you think that campaign would have been different now in the social world, with campaigns like that living more on social than on the than people saw it? Is it? We always look back now and go, that's amazing, and we saw it in the trade press. But you think that happened pre-Twitter, pre-Instagram. You think if that campaign
Twitter would have ruined it.
Twitter would have ruined it. Twitter ruins everything.
Yeah, they do. Well, you can't put... oh, God, this is so nerdy. You can't actually put messaging on the top of buses anymore.
Oh, really?
They need to see the numbers on the top of the bus to identify when accidents have happened. Hello. I work for TfL.
But you can't put fast food on the side of buses, but BK managed it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we could.
I've got one last question for you. Do you think Dan's voice do you think he's got a chance to be a voiceover artist? Some of our listeners have said he's got a really nice voice.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's just because I can see his face at the same time.
Really?
Thank you, Sophie.
Really?
Whereas I've been...
his voice doesn't go with his face.
Go with your outfit.
Whereas Matt, my mate, said that I sounded like an investigative journalist.
You do sound quite discerning, quite sceptical.
That's probably
cynical.
Definitely.
I think I'm just quite tired. Yeah, discerning, I'll take that.
Hungover.
That's a diplomatic way of putting it.
I'm permanently hungover, mate. It's working with you. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks, Sophie.
Not at all. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
That was great.
That was brilliant. I'm programmatic up now.
So you know what programmatic means? Shall I test you?
No. Can we go to lunch? It was that was great.
I like your question though, because you the first question when you talked about programmatic, you basically explained what I do, which is jiggling about. That's Dave dies. But no, the ability to change your creative as conditions change is what you explained, which is programmatic creative. So you were half right. Don't worry.
It's good.
You're not dumb. You're not thick.
It's good I'm on the show, isn't it?
Yeah, I like it. It makes a change because I feel like I've done a lot of talking today.
Yeah,
my mouth is dry.
No, I was looking there thinking, you sound like a voiceover guy. Sorry, I knew I shouldn't have said that. No, it's good. It was good seeing you in the zone, man. You just like slam dunking it every time.
This is the way we live.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know if I could do another. I don't know if I could go for more acronyms again, like NFC and.
Oh, I saw your eyes go.
THFC,
NFC,
MUFC,
THFC,
ASAP, WTF. I mean, it was good though. It was fascinating, and I think it was a nice, neat one to do. And we should try and do more stuff around the billboard, not just creative
around the billboard.
But like kind of we started talking to photographers, didn't we? We're kind of branching out a bit.
Yeah, it's nice. The production that goes into this, none of this work is exclusive to a creative department or a creative director. There are so many people that touch out-of-home campaigns because they're so visible, because there's, they are so public. There's a premium to it, so getting involved in it in the process and finding out all about the process. Before we started working with specialists, I hadn't got a clue what the specialists actually do. I just assumed they were a middleman for buying, but it's much more intelligent than that. It's good to hear about it.
Yeah, the whole seeing the whole picture rather than just going for the creative the whole time is interesting.
Absolutely. Right, it's Christmas lunch day.
Yeah, and I've got you a surprise.
Have you?
Yeah.
You got it here?
It's in my bag.
Can I see it?
No, you have to wait till lunch.
Oh, really? Am I going to have to pull your cracker to get it?
This is getting disturbing. I'm off.